I found out my parents had transferred the family metal shop to my brother. So I quit working 80 hours a week for free. A week later, Dad called in panic. Our biggest client is about to leave. I answered calmly, let the air handle it. All right, Reddit. I spent a decade working in my family's metal shop. No paycheck, just room and board, and vague promises about building equity. Then I found the succession plan tucked behind some files. My parents were handing everything to my younger brother who can't even deal with the machines. So I walked away. Now that they're in trouble, they're begging me to come back. Here's what went down. I'm Owen, 32 male. 10 years of my life disappeared into that shop in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The industrial zone near the bay where everything smells like cutting fluid and burnt metal. That's where I spent my 20s working myself into the ground for a business I thought would eventually be mine. I started right after finishing trade school. My grandfather founded the place in 1978, started with one CNC machine and a dream. By the time I came aboard, we had 6 CNC mills, 3 lathes, a full welding setup, and contracts with half the manufacturing plants in northeastern Wisconsin. I worked 80-hour weeks. Not an exaggeration. I'd show up at 5 in the morning to prep machines, load programs, get the first run going. Spent my days operating CNCS, TIG welding custom brackets, programming tool paths, dealing with suppliers, and managing clients who needed impossible tolerances on parts they designed wrong. I'd leave around 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later if we had a rush order. My hands were permanently stained with cutting oil. I had scars from metal shavings and burns from welding spatter. My back was shot from lifting steel plates, and my hearing was half gone from machine noise. My social life was non-existent. Friends stopped inviting me out after the 50th time I said I couldn't make it. Dating was a joke. Can't exactly maintain a relationship when you're married to a milling machine. But I kept going because I thought I was building my future. My parents said all the right things. This is our family legacy. You're investing in yourself. One day this will all pay off for you. I ate it up like an idiot. Here's the thing. There's always a favorite kid. And brother, I wasn't it. My brother Mason is 3 years younger than me. 29 now. He'd roll in around 10:30, grab coffee from the fancy machine my parents bought for the office, spend an hour scrolling through his phone, maybe answer an email or two, then disappear for a 2-hour lunch. He'd come back around 3, hang out in the climate-controlled office, then bounce by 4:30. His contribution? Attending the occasional client meeting where I'd already done all the technical work, taking credit for projects I designed and fabricated, posting on the company's Instagram with captions like, another successful build by our team, while standing next to parts I'd made. And get this, my parents paid him a salary, 45 grand a year for part-time Instagram modeling. Meanwhile, I got room and board at my parents' house. No cash, no health insurance, no 401k, just a bedroom and whatever leftovers were in the fridge. Mason drove a newish truck. My parents bought it for him because he needed reliable transportation for client meetings. I drove a 20-year-old beater that burned oil and had a check engine light on since 2008. But I didn't complain. I kept my head down and worked. I figured actions spoke louder than words. I thought if I just kept proving myself, eventually my parents would see my value. Nope. Turns out I was building someone else's kingdom. Last month, everything changed. I was in the office around midnight finishing paperwork for a big medical device contract. We just delivered 200 custom titanium components with tolerances tighter than anything we'd done before. I was filing the quality control documents when I noticed an envelope tucked behind some old binders. Had a red confidential stamp across the front. I handled most of the shop's administrative stuff. Seeing something marked confidential that I'd never seen before set off alarm bells. I opened it. Inside was a succession plan dated 4 months earlier. Legal documents, transfer of ownership papers. My parents were transferring 100% ownership of the business to Mason. My name didn't appear anywhere except on the employee roster. Yeah, employee roster. 10 years of my life. 80-hour weeks. Thousands of parts fabricated. Millions in contracts I'd landed. And according to these papers, I was nothing. Just labor. I stood there reading it over and over. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the dehumidifier. The anger came first. That burning feeling in your chest when you realize you've been played. Then came the sadness. When you understand your own parents looked at everything you did and decided it wasn't worth anything. I thought about all those mornings I dragged myself out of bed at 4:30. All the weekends I spent in the shop while everyone else was at Lambeau Field. The friends who stopped calling. The relationships that never happened. The life I'd given up. The sacrifices. And they decided Mason deserved it. Mason, who couldn't program a CNC to save his life. Mason, who didn't know the difference between 6061 and 7075 aluminum. The guy who'd probably never spent more than 30 hours in the shop in any given week. I took the documents home. Didn't sleep. Just sat in my room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Around 3 in the morning, I made a decision. I was done. The next morning, I got up at my usual time, drove to the shop like always. But instead of starting the machines, I sat down in the office and wrote out my resignation on the company letterhead. I quit. Good luck running this place without me. You're going to need it. I left the letter on my dad's desk, grabbed my personal tools, my grandfather's old welding helmet that he'd given me when I started, and a photo of him and me from my first week. Then I walked out, drove away while the sun was coming up over the bay. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't have to be anywhere at 5 in the morning, didn't have to answer to anyone. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I crashed at my buddy Adam's place. He had a couch and didn't ask too many questions. I spent my time trying to figure out what to do next. At 32 with no real savings and a decade of unpaid labor, my options felt limited. Then exactly 8 days after I quit, my phone rang. My dad. His voice sounded strained, almost panicked. "Owen, are you serious? Where have you gone? We need you back right now. The Precision Dynamics account. They're threatening to pull out. They're saying quality's dropped and nobody's responding to their technical questions. We can't afford to lose them." Precision Dynamics, our biggest client, medical device manufacturer. They accounted for about 40% of our revenue. High tolerance work, complex parts, demanding specs. I'd built that relationship over 4 years. I let the silence sit for a moment. A week ago, I would have rushed back to fix everything, but not anymore. "Let Mason handle it," I said calmly. "He's the owner now, right? I'm sure he'll figure it out." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel guilty. But hanging up on my dad wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. My phone blew up after that call. My mom. My dad again. Text messages from Mason that started with, "What's your problem?" and escalated to, "You're going to regret this." I ignored all of them. Adam walked into the living room. "Everything good, man?" "Yeah. Just my family realizing they can't run their business without me." "About time you walked away from that situation," he said. "I've been watching you kill yourself for that shop for years." "For what?" "Nothing." Adam was a union electrician, made good money, had benefits, worked his 40 hours, and went home. He'd been telling me for years I was getting screwed. 3 days later, I was getting food at this little diner on the east side when I saw my parents walk in. My mom spotted me first. Her face went through about 5 different emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt, then just cold. They walked over to my booth. My dad stayed standing. Tried to loom over me like that would intimidate me back into line. "We need to talk," he said. "Not really," I replied, focusing on my eggs. "You're being childish, Owen. The business needs you. Your family needs you." Funny. The succession plan didn't mention anything about me being needed. Just said Mason gets everything. My mom jumped in. "You weren't supposed to see that yet. We were going to discuss it with you properly." "But when? After another 5 years of free labor?" "You lived in our house," my dad said. "Rent-free. We fed you. That's not nothing. I worked 80 hours a week for 10 years. I brought in Precision Dynamics. I landed the contracts with Badger Manufacturing and Superior Components. I designed the custom jigs that increased our efficiency by 30%. I trained every new employee. And you think room and board covers that?" Other people in the diner were starting to look over. My dad's face was turning red. "Mason is your brother," my mom said. "He needs the stability more than you. You're capable. You can make it on your own. He needs structure." "Yeah, that's the problem," I interrupted. "You handed him everything, including 10 years of my work." My dad leaned in closer. "If you don't come back, the business will fail. Is that what you want? To destroy your grandfather's legacy out of spite?" That one almost got to me. But then I thought about Mason posting Instagram stories from Lambeau Field while I was working overtime. Thought about him driving that new truck while I scraped together gas money. "No," I said. "You did that when you decided I wasn't worth including in the future of a business I built. Now, if you'll excuse me, my eggs are getting cold." They stood there for another few seconds. My mom looked like she wanted to say something else, but my dad grabbed her arm and pulled her away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandfather. He'd built that shop from nothing. He used to tell me stories about the early days. How he saved up to buy that first CNC machine. How he built relationships with clients based on quality and trust. He'd had a journal. I remembered seeing it years ago when I was helping organize the attic. Never really looked at it closely, but now I was curious. I drove back to my parents' house at 2 in the morning, parked down the street, snuck into the detached garage where they stored old stuff, found the boxes from the attic. It took me an hour, but I found the journal. Leather cover, pages yellowed with age, my grandfather's handwriting. I sat in my truck with a flashlight reading page after page. He documented everything: the struggles of starting out, his philosophy on business, his thoughts on family and legacy. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. Tucked between 2 pages was a handwritten agreement dated 1991. The language was clear. This business belongs to those who build it. Anyone who gives their sweat and skill to keep this shop running deserves to share in its success. No one should claim another man's work as their own. My grandfather had wanted equity, fairness. He'd wanted the business to go to whoever actually did the work, not just whoever happened to be the favorite. I took photos of every page with my phone. This changed everything. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Eric. Young guy, maybe 35, ran a small practice in Howard. Adam's cousin had used him for a contract dispute and said he was good. I walked into his office carrying my grandfather's journal and a folder of documents I'd printed out. He went through everything methodically. After about 90 minutes, he looked up at me. "This agreement from your grandfather," he said, tapping the journal. "It's not a formal legal document, but it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with your documented contributions, we might have a case." Might? We need to prove 3 things. First, that you were the primary driver of the business's success. Second, that the current succession plan violates your grandfather's documented wishes. Third, that your brother is unfit to run the company. "The third part won't be hard," I said. Eric smiled. "We need evidence, though. Everything you can get. Customer testimonials, financial records, proof that the business depended on you specifically." "I might have something there," I said. I spent the next week gathering evidence like my life depended on it. Went through old emails I'd saved. Found messages from clients praising my work specifically. One from the precision dynamics engineer. "Owen, your attention to detail on these parts is why we keep coming back. You understand our specs better than anyone." Another from Badger Manufacturing. "We tried 3 other shops before finding you guys. Owen's technical knowledge solved problems our own engineers couldn't figure out. I made spreadsheets showing the business's growth over my 10 years versus the previous decade. Revenue nearly tripled. Client retention went from 60% to 92%. We'd expanded into medical device manufacturing, aerospace components, and precision automotive parts. All sectors I'd broken into. Then I dug into the financial records. I still had access to old bank statements I'd saved on a thumb drive. Started going through Mason's company card charges. What I found was impressive. I mean impressively criminal. Mason had been using the company card like his personal ATM. Charges at Kohl's, Best Buy, restaurants nowhere near our clients. Season tickets to Packers games marked as client entertainment, even though we had email records showing those clients didn't attend. A 5-day trip to Door County charged as a business conference during a week when no industry conferences were happening. My favorite was a $4,000 home theater system delivered to his apartment, listed as office equipment. I organized everything, made copies, took everything to Eric. He whistled when he saw the financial evidence. "This is significant, Owen. This is about fiduciary responsibility. If we can prove your brother misused company funds, it strengthens our argument that he's unfit to own the business." Over the next few weeks, I kept building the case. Eric wanted more proof that my departure was impacting the business. I called some former coworkers. There was this woman named Caroline. She ran quality control. We'd worked together for 7 years. "Owen, honest to God, it's chaos without you," she said. "Mason's trying to run jobs he doesn't understand. Last week he programmed a mill wrong and wrecked a $50,000 titanium workpiece. Your dad lost his mind. We're 3 weeks behind on the precision dynamics order, and they're threatening to leave. Would you be willing to document that?" Absolutely. I got similar responses from 2 other employees. They all agreed to provide written statements. Then I got a call that changed everything. Frank Palmer. He was my grandfather's best friend and the shop's first employee. Retired 5 years ago, but still lived in Green Bay. "Owen, I heard what's happening with your folks in the business." "Yeah, it's a mess, Frank. Your grandfather would be ashamed of them. He specifically told me he wanted that shop to go to whoever put in the work. That was his whole philosophy. He wrote that down, actually, in his journal. I found it." "Good. That journal has weight. Listen, I have something that might help you." Frank lived in a small house near the airport. I drove over that afternoon. He was waiting on his porch. He led me inside to his garage workshop. Been cleaning out old stuff. Found these. He handed me a box of photographs. Photos from the shop's early days. My grandfather operating that first CNC machine. Then photos from throughout the years, including dozens from my time there. Your grandfather took these himself, Frank said. You'll notice something about these photos from your years. I looked through them. Photo after photo showed me working, operating machines, welding, programming, meeting with clients. In a lot of them, my grandfather was in the background, watching me work with this proud expression. He knew you were the one, Frank said. Told me multiple times. Frank, he'd say. Owen's got it. He's got the work ethic, the skill, the dedication. I felt a lump in my throat. Why didn't he put it in writing then? Make it official? He did. Or he tried. He was working on updated succession documents right before he died. Had an appointment with his lawyer scheduled. But the heart attack got him first. Your parents must have pushed through their own plan after. Frank pulled out one more thing. An old file folder. These are contracts your grandfather signed, going back 30 years. Look at the language in the early ones versus the later ones I looked through the contracts. Frank was right. The progression was clear. My grandfather had been building towards something more equitable. Eric nearly jumped out of his chair when I showed him the new evidence. This is exactly what we needed. The photos establish a clear pattern. Your grandfather's noted intentions, supported by his friend's testimony, give weight to the journal entry. We're not just arguing about inheritance anymore. We're arguing about honoring a founder's documented wishes. He laid out the plan. We'd file a lawsuit to invalidate the succession plan based on my grandfather's agreement. We'd argue I was the rightful heir based on my contributions. And we'd use Mason's financial mismanagement as evidence he shouldn't be in charge. But Owen, I need you to understand something, Eric said. This is going to get ugly. Your family will fight back. They'll try to paint you as greedy or vindictive. Are you ready for that? I thought about it for seconds. 10 years of my life. 80-hour weeks. No pay, no recognition. Yeah, I was ready. Let's do it, I said. He filed the lawsuit 2 days later. It laid out everything. My grandfather's journal and documented philosophy. Frank's testimony. My 10 years of contributions. The financial records showing Mason's misuse of funds. Photos spanning a decade. We weren't messing around. My parents got served 3 days after we filed. Then Mason. My phone started blowing up again. Texts from my mom. Voicemails from my dad. Mason sent me a message calling me every name in the book. I blocked his number and kept moving forward. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I couldn't sleep. Spent my nights at Adam's place gaming or watching movies, trying to distract myself. The shop was falling apart without me. I heard about it through Caroline, who'd text me updates. Mason tried to run the new aerospace job today. Messed up the tool offsets and scrapped 3 parts. Customers furious. Your dad hired some guy to replace you. He quit after 2 days. Said Mason was impossible to work with. Precision Dynamics officially pulled their account. They're going with Milwaukee Precision Manufacturing instead. Each message was vindicating, but also painful. That shop was my grandfather's legacy. Watching them destroy it hurt more than I expected. One afternoon, I was at the Quick Trip getting coffee when I ran into Mason. He was getting energy drinks. He saw me and his face twisted into something ugly. This is all your fault, he said loud enough that other customers looked over. How do you figure? The business is falling apart because you're too much of a baby to handle not being the favorite son. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Mason, you couldn't program a CNC if your life depended on it. The business is falling apart because you're incompetent, not because I left. His face went red. I'm running that shop just fine. You lost Precision Dynamics. They were 40% of our revenue. How's that fine? We'll find other clients. With what quality? You scrapped 3 aerospace parts yesterday because you can't set up a job correctly. He stepped closer, tried to get in my face. You're going to lose this lawsuit. Then you'll come crawling back, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are. Good talk, Mason. I walked past him. No point engaging with someone who couldn't see reality. 2 days before the hearing, Frank called me. Owen, I found something else. Was going through more of your grandfather's old files. He kept records of who worked on what projects. And made a spreadsheet. For every major project over the last 10 years, I noted who the primary operator was. Want to guess the result? I'm hoping it's good news. 93% of projects. You were the primary or sole operator on 93% of jobs over the past decade. Can you testify to that? Already told your lawyer I'm available. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep at all. Just lay on Adam's couch staring at the ceiling. The courthouse in Green Bay was this old building downtown. I got there an hour early, sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the bay through the buildings. Eric showed up. We went over everything one more time. Your family's lawyer is going to try to paint you as bitter. Don't give them ammunition. Be professional. My parents and Mason arrived right before the hearing started. They had some lawyer from Milwaukee with them. We all filed into the courtroom. The judge was this older woman, maybe 60, with short gray hair and reading glasses. Judge Denise Porter. She looked stern, but fair. The hearing started. Eric went first. He presented everything. My grandfather's journal, Frank's testimony about my grandfather's intentions, and the statistical breakdown. The photos, client testimonials, employee statements. Then he showed the financial evidence. Mason's company card charges. $75,000 in personal expenses over 3 years. Every receipt blown up on the screen. The courtroom went quiet. Your Honor, these expenses were charged to company accounts with no legitimate business purpose, Eric said. Personal electronics, entertainment, travel unrelated to any business activity. Back and forth it went. Every charge their lawyer tried to justify. Eric dismantled each justification with documentation. Then came testimony. I went first. Eric asked about my history with the business, my relationship with my grandfather, my contributions. I believed I was building something, I said. I thought my work mattered. When I found the succession plan, it felt like my entire adult life had been a lie. Their lawyer cross-examined me, tried to make it seem like I was just angry. I was 22 when I started, I said. I trusted my parents. They said I was building equity, that this was a family business and we'd all benefit. I didn't think I needed a contract with my own family. But you never asked for ownership documents? No, because I trusted them. The judge made a note. Frank testified next. Talked about working with my grandfather for 30 years. About how my grandfather valued hard work and fairness. Owen's grandfather told me directly, multiple times, that Owen was the future of that shop. Mason took the stand after that. Their lawyer asked softball questions. I've been modernizing our approach, Mason said. Building our online presence. Developing strategic partnerships. Eric's cross-examination was brutal. Can you name 3 clients you've personally brought to the company? Mason hesitated. I've been working on several prospects. Names? I don't have them memorized right now. Can you describe the setup process for a CNC mill? Another hesitation. That's what our operators do. You're claiming you're fit to run a metal fabrication shop, but you don't know how to set up the primary equipment? I handle the business side. What was last quarter's revenue? I'd have to check the records. You don't know basic information about the business you're claiming to be fit to own? Mason got defensive, started making excuses, said he delegated technical details. High-level strategy that resulted in losing 40% of the company's revenue within 3 weeks of the primary operator leaving. That was sabotage. How is leaving a job sabotage? Did my client sign a contract forcing him to work there? Mason didn't have an answer. The judge called a recess. Eric pulled me aside. That went well. Your brother's testimony helped us more than hurt us. When we reconvened, the judge looked at both sides. I'm going to take 3 days to review all evidence and testimonies. I'll issue a ruling by Friday. Court is adjourned. 3 days. 72 hours to find out if 10 years of my life meant anything or nothing. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. Caroline kept texting me updates from the shop. Your dad hasn't been in for 2 days. Your mom's running around trying to manage things. She doesn't know what she's doing. Mason came in this morning, lasted an hour, left after the Badger manufacturing rep showed up. Another employee quit, said he's not staying if Mason's in charge. The business was in freefall. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt sad. My grandfather had built something real, and they were destroying it through incompetence. Friday morning arrived. Eric called me at 7. Be at the courthouse by 9. Judge Porter is ready to rule. I got there early. Then Adam showed up. Thought you might want some backup. You didn't have to come. Yeah, I did. You're my friend. We walked into the courthouse together. My parents and Mason were already there with their lawyer. They looked tired, stressed. My mom had been crying. Frank showed up right before we went in. Gave me a firm handshake. Your grandfather would be proud, Owen. No matter what happens in there. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Porter came in carrying a stack of papers. Her face was unreadable. I've reviewed all evidence and testimonies presented in this case, she began. This involves complex questions of family business succession, founder intent, and fiduciary responsibility. My heart was hammering. The plaintiff's grandfather clearly documented his philosophy about business ownership. While his journal entry is not a formal legal document, it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with testimony from the founder's longtime associate and documented progression toward employee ownership, the founder's wishes are evident. She paused. The evidence of the plaintiff's contributions is overwhelming. Client testimonials consistently credit him specifically. Employee statements confirm his role as the primary operator. Statistical analysis shows he was responsible for 93% of production over the past decade. His departure resulted in immediate operational collapse. These demonstrate that the plaintiff was the functional operator and driver of business success. I felt hope starting to build. Regarding the defendant's fitness to run the business, I find the evidence deeply concerning. Mason's face was red. My mom was panicking. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The succession plan transferring 100% ownership to the defendant is invalidated as contrary to documented founder intent and inequitable given the plaintiff's contributions. I couldn't breathe. However, given the current state of the business, including significant debt, operational deterioration, and loss of major clients, I am ordering the business to be sold. Proceeds will be divided equally between both children after debts and the defendant's improper expenses are settled. The gavel came down. I'd won. We filed out in silence. My parents left quickly. Mason shot me one last hateful look, then stormed off. Eric shook my hand. Congratulations, Owen. That's about as clear a victory as you could hope for. What happens now? The business gets appraised and put on the market. Could take a few months. After Mason reimburses those expenses and debts are covered, you're probably looking at somewhere around $50,000 to $70,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to start over. Adam and I went to a diner afterward, had coffee at 11 in the morning. How do you feel? Adam asked. I don't know. Relieved, sad, angry, all of it. You did the right thing. Yeah, but it cost me my family. They cost themselves your family when they decided to use you for 10 years. Don't forget that. He was right, but it still hurt. The business sold 6 weeks later. Some manufacturing company from Milwaukee bought it, mostly for the client list and equipment. They kept Caroline and a couple other employees. My parents and Mason lost money once all the debts were calculated. My share after everything was settled came to $63,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start fresh. I started looking at commercial real estate around Green Bay. Found a small space in Ashwaubenon, about 1,200 square feet. Concrete floors, roll-up door, decent power, perfect for a small fabrication shop. Signed a lease, bought some used equipment. Spent about half my money on equipment and the lease deposit. I named the shop Palmer Precision, after my grandfather. Felt right. The first few weeks were just setup. Getting equipment installed and calibrated, building a basic website, getting licensed and insured. Then I started making parts. Small stuff at first. Posted on social media. Let people know I was open for business. The response surprised me. A contractor called about custom brackets. A boat shop needed stainless steel fittings. A gym wanted custom weight equipment. Small jobs, but they added up. Word spread. People remembered my work. 3 weeks in, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Owen, this is Wayne from Precision Dynamics. My heart rate picked up. Wayne was their senior engineer. The guy I'd worked with for 4 years. Wayne, how's it going? Good. Listen, I heard you started your own shop. We're not happy with Milwaukee Precision. You interested in doing work for us again? Absolutely. That order became my first major contract. I worked 18-hour days building those parts. Every dimension perfect. Delivered them 2 days early. Wayne called the day after they received the order. This is exactly what we needed. Let's talk about bringing you back as our primary vendor. Just like that, I had my anchor client back. I hired Caroline 2 months after opening. The Milwaukee company had let her go when they restructured. I know you're small, she said, but I'd rather work for someone who knows what he's doing. I can't match what you were making yet, but I can offer a percentage of profits once we're established. Deal. Having Caroline changed everything. She handled quality control and secondary operations, freed me up to program and run the CNC, take on more complex jobs. We worked in sync. The business grew steadily. More clients. Better projects. I wasn't getting rich, but I was making enough to live on and reinvest. Most importantly, I was building something that was actually mine. I saw my parents once after the verdict, ran into them at Festival Foods about 5 months later. We passed each other in the aisle. My mom looked away immediately. My dad nodded slightly but didn't speak. I nodded back and kept walking. There wasn't anything to say. Mason, I heard through town gossip, moved to Milwaukee. Couldn't handle everyone in Green Bay knowing what he'd done. Last I heard, he was working retail. One afternoon, about 8 months after opening, a woman came into the shop. Mid-30s, carrying blueprints. Are you Owen? That's me. I'm Nicole. I'm opening a coffee roastery in Des Peres. Need custom stainless steel equipment and fittings. Someone told me you do quality work. We talked for an hour about her project. She was passionate about what she was building. I can do it, I said. When do you need delivery? 2 months? I did the job. Built everything to spec. Delivered on time. She was thrilled. Sent me photos of her roastery's opening day. Nicole started stopping by the shop sometimes. Brought samples of whatever coffee blend she was roasting. We'd talk about running small businesses, about the struggles and victories. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Talk about maybe doing more work together. First real date I'd had in over 10 years. It's been 18 months now since I left the family business. Palmer Precision is doing well. Steady income, growing client base, good reputation. I work hard, but it's different now. I take days off. I see friends. I have an actual life. Nicole and I are still together. Her roastery is thriving. Sometimes we talk about our futures, about what we're building together. It's nice having someone who understands what it's like to build something from scratch. My relationship with my parents is basically non-existent. We don't talk, don't see each other. Part of me wishes it could be different, but a bigger part of me knows they made their choice. I think about my grandfather often, wonder what he'd think about all this. Sometimes I pull out his journal and read his entries. Late at night in my workshop, I feel his presence. Like he's there with me, nodding approval. This workshop isn't his factory. It's smaller, newer, but it's mine, built by my hands. Nobody can take that from me. 18 months turned into 2 years, then 2.5. Palmer Precision kept growing. I hired 2 more people, a kid named Corey, fresh out of tech school, who reminded me of myself at that age, and Tommy, a retired machinist who got bored of retirement. We were a solid crew. The shop wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Then one Tuesday morning, I got this bomb. I was programming a toolpath when my phone rang. Unknown number. Owen Palmer? Speaking. This is Andrew Harlan. I'm the owner of Harlan Manufacturing. We bought your family's old shop about 2 years ago. I felt a weird twist in my stomach. Okay, I'll be direct. We're shutting down that facility. It's been nothing but problems since we bought it. But I've been hearing good things about your operation. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in acquiring some equipment before we auction everything off. What kind of equipment? There's a newer CNC lathe, barely used. Some welding equipment. A few jigs and fixtures. I know you probably have history with the place. Thought I'd give you first option. I drove over that afternoon. The shop looked different, emptier, but there was equipment still there, including my grandfather's original CNC mill from the 80s. I'd learned on that machine. Spent hundreds of hours running parts while my grandfather watched and coached. It was obsolete by modern standards, but seeing it sitting there hit different. That old mill, I said to Andrew. It's not on your list to sell. That dinosaur? It's not even worth the cost to haul it away. We were going to scrap it. I'll take it. And the lathe. And those fixtures over there. We worked out a deal. He practically gave me everything. I had everything hauled to Palmer Precision. The new lathe went into production immediately. But the old CNC mill, my grandfather's machine, I set that up in a corner. Restored it over a few weeks. Got it running smooth. Didn't plan to use it for production. Too slow for modern work. But I wanted it operational. I wanted it in my shop. A physical connection to my grandfather. Frank came by the day I finished restoring it. He walked up to the old machine and ran his hand over it like he was greeting an old friend. Haven't seen this beauty in years, he said. Your grandfather was so proud when he bought this. He spent months learning how to program it. I learned on this machine. Frank turned to look at the rest of my shop. He'd be proud of this, Owen. Really proud. 3 years ago, I was working 80-hour weeks for nothing. Living in my parents' house, no money, no life, no future that was actually mine. Now I owned a business, had a relationship, had a life worth living. The lawsuit didn't just get me money. It got me freedom. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.